I'm Jeffrey Urbin, the Education Director here at the Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum. And today we have a special presentation. It's going to be a little bit lighter than ordinarily. Today we're going to be talking about picnics. The Roosevelts loved to picnic. They had their picnic blankets, they had their picnic baskets, and they also were able to toss in a little diplomacy even when they were having fun in the sun with picnics. Now, in order to do this presentation justice, as any good researcher would do, I spent last weekend at Lake Taconic, which is up in Columbia County, just north here of Dutchess County, at the Taconic State Park, which was actually a CCC program during the Roosevelt era. And they have a beautiful lake up there and beautiful camping grounds and wonderful trails and things. And, just really put me in mind of the Roosevelts. And I think the thing that struck me the most was that there were literally hundreds of picnickers there all across the park. I think it's over 300 acres. And they were all staying 6 feet apart, so everything was good. But it just made me feel really good that, here we are 80 years later, people are enjoying picnicking just as the way the Roosevelts did, and they're enjoying it at a state park that President Roosevelt built through the CCC. And here is a picture of FDR with a group of young men at a CCC camp. And guess what he's doing? That's right. He's having a little picnic lunch with the young men that were there, setting up the camp and doing the things that the CCC did, making the trails and the campsites and the visitor centers and those sorts of things as well. So I just wanted to start off with that because it's really a nice opportunity to draw in some of the Roosevelt programs and this topic as well. Now, the Roosevelts loved the great outdoors. That's a very Rooseveltian thing. And that is true for the Roosevelts of the Hudson Valley and the Roosevelts of Oyster Bay. Teddy Roosevelt, he was a great outdoorsman as well. It was also true for the Delanos, Franklin's people from his mother's side. And of course, Franklin grew up here on the property, and 3,200 acres or so, and at the peak. And the property went right along the Hudson River, so you have a beautiful riverfront, for extending for quite a long distance. And on the property, there were ponds and streams, so FDR was able to, play in the water and learn about, aquatic life. There were trees and forests, and of course that's where he gets his love of forestry and his love of trees. There were meadows and fields and things, and he just grew up immersed in all this. Looking at the animals, looking at the plants, and enjoying, of course, the many birds that were on the property as well. So this picnicking for the Roosevelts goes back many generations. And here is a picture of a young Franklin and Eleanor, and they are picnicking at the Delano estate down in Newburgh, New York. And this is them down there enjoying the river from the other side, down in the Newburgh section of the river. But again, it was not just the Delano side, the Roosevelt side, but also the Delano side that enjoyed the picnicking as well. Here is a picture of Franklin really enjoying himself with Eleanor up in Berrytown, which is just north of Dutchess County. And I love this picture because you could just see how playful Franklin is there and how much he's enjoying being outside. Now, you'll notice that I guess he would consider this to be dressed informally, for the time. But when they picnicked, they dressed up pretty fancy, but I guess it was still considered to be somewhat casual by the standards of the day. Now, the Roosevelts had President Roosevelt had 4 favorite places to picnic. One of them was Campobello, one of them was Top Cottage, one of them was Valkill, and the final one was any place he could. And anytime he was able to get a picnic in, a meal outdoors, that's exactly what he would try to do. And so here is a picture of Franklin heading off on a picnic up in Campobello, New Brunswick, which was the Roosevelt estate and cottage vacation home up there. And he's got his blanket or sweatshirt, and he's got his little basket, and he's heading out for a day of picnicking. So even when they were on vacation, they would picnic. They would also picnic while they were working, as a way to sort of break the monotony and break the routine of working. So here he is up at Campobello. The next picture is one of my favorite Roosevelt pictures of all time. And it is a picture of Franklin and Eleanor, and they're up at Campobello on a picnic. And look how just natural and carefree and cozy they are. Of course, this is before the trouble in the marriage. But Eleanor is beaming. Franklin is snuggling up against her there. You get the picnic baskets off in the background, and just a wonderful, wonderful time for these guys to be having out there in the great outdoors. The Roosevelts would pack up these picnics up at Campobello. As I said, they would go and picnic up there. They would also picnic here at a place called Top Cottage, which is actually a small cottage now. It started off as a favorite picnic area of President Roosevelt. It was over on the eastern part of the property, and it was up on a hill where he could overlook the entire Hudson River. And he would go up there and picnic, and then he would say, well, if the weather gets bad, I need some kind of shelter. So he began to doodle and sketch around, and he was going to make a little lean-to, and then he kept doodling and kept sketching around, and before you knew it, he had designed a cottage, Top Cottage, which actually became the first entirely 100% handicapped accessible home in America, because he built it for himself with the low windows, so he could wheel up with a wheelchair and look out the windows. He could wheel right out onto the porch. There were no thresholds from one room to the other. It was all one floor, and the doors were nice and wide, so he could get through there with his wheelchair as well. What might you find in a Roosevelt picnic basket? That's a good question. So we happen to have a reproduction Roosevelt picnic basket right here, and let's just take a little look and see what we might find in the Roosevelt basket. Now, of course, they're going to have their blanket, right, because you got those fancy clothes on. You want to get your blanket out so you don't get sitting in the mud, those sorts of things. And you're going to pack up a basket, and sometimes these picnics for the Roosevelts were just Franklin and Eleanor. Sometimes it was Franklin and Eleanor and a few friends and a few family members. Sometimes the picnics, might have 100 people at them if they were, picnic for some kind of an event, a staff picnic or something like that. Large or small, the Roosevelts love to picnic. So let's see what they might have in there. Let's see. Well, first of all, they're going to have some sandwiches. Okay, and this could have used some ice. So they're going to have some sandwiches there, right? Some nice snacks and sandwiches. Maybe some pepperoni, and put this on some crackers and enjoy that out there as well. Of course, they're going to have beverages. Here's a little Coca-Cola. And what do we have here? Wait a minute. Hey, what are you doing on there? Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Anytime you have a picnic, you're going to have ants, even at a Roosevelt picnic. Let me just see what he's doing on there. I studied anthropology in college, so I'll be able to understand him. Why are you here? You're here because it's a picnic, and you thought it would be fun? Because the Roosevelts like picnic, and your people like to picnic with them? All right, but see, I'm doing a Facebook Live thing out here, so I can't really have you here. Do you mind if I just put you over here and we can talk later? Okay, good. All right, so I'm just going to put this guy over there and see what we do with that. What else might we have in here? Well, you're going to have your cutlery and your plates and things like that as well, and of course, some maybe fresh fruit, some nice fresh grapes and such. The Roosevelts also like to have corn on the cob. Corn on the cob was a favorite at picnics. And sometimes what they would do is they would freeze the corn on the cob so that they would have the corn all year long, not just during the main corn season. So let me just put this basket back over there, and I'm sorry that ant got in there, but you know when you're having picnics, these kinds of things happen. You never can tell where these ants are going to be or what they're going to do. Oh my goodness. Are you serious? I told you to wait over there. And you got a friend with you? Everybody loves a picnic. So the Roosevelts would have these sandwiches. They would have corn on the cob. They would have fresh fruit. Very often they had berries from their friend Henry Morgenthau, who had an orchard and a farm south of here in Dutchess County. And they would also like to picnic in other places as well. Here is another picture of them picnicking up at Campobello along the water side here. Okay, and Franklin Roosevelt at the picnics loved to swim. So whether he was swimming at Valkill or whether he was swimming in New Brunswick, he would always get into the water and enjoy that as well. Here is another picture. Again, they get the nice picnic basket and you know, friends all coming around. This looks like maybe on a sand dune or something up in New Brunswick. Not the most beautiful spot to picnic, I would think, but nonetheless. They would also picnic over at Top Cottage. And here is a picture of the president with the King of Greece, and he is entertaining on his patio porch over at Top Cottage. This was the cottage that he actually built that started out to try to be that lean-to, but ended up becoming you know, an actual building and such. So anytime he could get outdoors, anytime he could get a picnic squished in there, he would do that. Here is a picture of a young Franklin Roosevelt picnicking on the deck of a sailboat. And he's sticking a nice big chunk of something there, enjoying, looks like a piece of cake maybe. And again, anytime, any place he could get a picnic in, he would do that. Here is a picture of President Roosevelt having a picnic for one. So, you know, even in his car, just with a little tray on his lap, if he got a chance to, you know, be outdoors and, you know, enjoy the wildlife and the sounds of the birds and things, you know. Oh, look at that. You can almost hear the birds coming from that tree in the background there. He would get out there if he could. Now, even if the president was going to be conducting business many times, he would, you know, turn it into a picnic. And so here we have a picture of the president with members of his staff, and they are in Warm Springs, Georgia, where the president would go down and he would enjoy you know, the comforts of Georgia and the comforts of the water there in the Warm Springs, which of course, you know, helped alleviate some of the conditions and symptoms of his polio. But what I find interesting about this is, so they just sort of set up next to this pond, and you know, the president's there, and again, they're, you know, he's got his tie on, and so the guy's got his tie on, and he's got two guys holding a board with the picnic lunch on it. And so you know, just, I guess it's good to be the king, right? You know, you want a picnic and you get the two guys to hold a board, making a makeshift picnic table for you right there as well. Now, so they would picnic at Campobello, they would picnic at Top Cottage, they would picnic at Valkill, and then in any place that they were able to make it happen. And the Roosevelts were hardy picnickers. If it rained, if the wind came up, they just took it all in stride and just sought whatever shelter they were able to find in that way. The picnics were hosted for friends, for family, for staff and co-workers, and also very often underserved children. But probably the picnic that they are most famous for is the picnic that was held here at Top Cottage in 1939. And that picnic was held for none other than the King and Queen of England. So here is President Roosevelt and King George the Sixth, I believe. And he is, this is them when they're in the state portion of the visit, so they're all dressed up and dolled up and such. But Roosevelt invited the King and Queen of England in June of 1939 to come to the United States. And the purpose of that was to solidify the relationship between the United States and Great Britain. So President Roosevelt saw that Adolf Hitler was creating all kinds of problems in Europe. He had taken over much of Europe, and England was sort of seen as the bulwark against Hitler in Europe. And so Roosevelt foresaw the fact that we were going to have to cooperate with the British in order to defeat Hitler. Now, the problem was that rank and file members of the country here in the United States didn't have such a great feeling about the British. Going all the way back to the Revolution, right, where we had to fight to earn our freedom, and then of course the War of 1812, where they come back and they burn the White House, and then World War I, we felt that they kind of dragged us into that with a whole bunch of promises and such, and that didn't really work out the way that we had wanted it to. It really wasn't until the Beatles that the United States really began to accept the British fully. But the process began with Franklin Roosevelt inviting the King and Queen of England here to the United States. And what they did was they traveled around the country and visited various locations, starting off in Canada first and then working their way down. They went on a yacht on the Potomac River. They went to Mount Vernon and laid a wreath at the tomb of George Washington, who of course was the nation's leader during the Revolution. So if nothing says binding up the wounds between the two countries, laying a wreath at the grave of your former enemy certainly does that. But while they were doing all this, and here is a program from that, a program of the state visit of their Britannic Majesties, June 1939. And this will show you exactly what the itinerary was, who the folks were that were in the royal party. And then it's got a breakdown day by day as to what they did and where they went. So Tuesday, June 6th, which of course later would become D-Day, Wednesday and Thursday as they're going through. And one of the most important things about this picnic was that at this picnic, the Roosevelts and the Royals really kind of let their hair down, or at least as much as Roosevelts and Royals could. And one of the things that was played very well in the press was the fact that at the picnic, there was a very important thing served, and that was none other than hot dogs. And the press, here's a copy of the menu, and you can see that there were other things on there as well. It's not just hot dogs. There was Virginia ham, hot dogs if weather permits. And as we said a minute ago, with the Roosevelts, the weather always permits. Cold turkeys, sausages, some Jell-O green salads, those sorts of things as well. But the thing that really caught the imagination was the hot dogs, because what this was just good old-fashioned American picnic food being served to the King and Queen of England. And the press kind of ran with this, and the American public loved the fact that, wow, these guys are pretty cool, right? They're pretty down and just like regular folks, that they enjoy eating hot dogs for picnics and such. And so this was what came to be called hot dog diplomacy, because in and among this trip to the United States, not just at Top Cottage, but throughout the entire trip, the United States and England began to solidify their relationship and began to solidify what becomes the Great Alliance that defeats Hitler during World War II. And they begin to talk about some ways to do, bases for ships and those sorts of things as well. And here is another picture of the royal couple, and you can see here they are now. As what's interesting, I think, is the president is standing, and he's got his cane in the one hand, and he's holding on to a military officer with the other. But if you weren't knowing to look for that, it looks like it's just a group of people standing there. And of course, here is, the Queen Mum. So very important time in American politics and in American um, uh, relations leading up to the war. Now, a moment ago, we looked in the picnic basket, and there was something else that I wanted to show you. If you go to our YouTube site, you will find some home movies of the Roosevelts picnicking. These are incredible. They were just recently discovered in the last couple of years. We gained access to them. We've got them up on our YouTube site, and what it's going to show you are some games that the Roosevelts like to play at these picnics. So it's actual film footage of silent. It was shot with Super 8, I believe, and it's the Roosevelts engaging in play at the picnics. And one of the things you'll see is a large group of people playing Ring Around the Rosie, dropping down and being called out and such. There's also a game that's called Are You There, Moriarty? And this was a game that was played by members of the press. And it is a game where you lie down on a blanket, you're blindfolded, you have a rolled up newspaper, and you stretch out, you hold hands with the other guy who is doing the exact same thing on the other side of the blanket, and someone says, "Are you there, Moriarty?" And that is the cue to begin whacking the heck out of each other with these newspapers. Now, of course, it's the press doing this, so you would hope that they're using their own newspaper against the other paper, the other rival. And it is done to the great joy and the great fun and excitement of the various spectators. Now, I want to show you something that I discovered myself earlier while I was doing some research for this, and it ties into the film that you see if you go to our YouTube site. While I was doing some research and poking around, I came across this device, and this is something that you don't see many of these days, and I believe it belonged to Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's I believe it was used to cheat during the hold the egg on the spoon game that you're going to see when you go to that film. Now, Eleanor Roosevelt was the Roosevelt family hold the egg on a spoon champion. Every time there was a picnic and they played that game, she went home with the trophy. But if you take a look at the film, you're going to notice, and this may shatter your image of Mrs. Roosevelt as the fine, upstanding person that she actually was. But in the game of hold the egg on the spoon, where you're supposed to just have the egg on the spoon and it's held on there automatically, Mrs. Roosevelt actually cheats. She actually cheats. If you watch closely, she puts her thumb on top of the egg and then runs along. So, I don't know if this device was actually ever used, but she certainly did go home with the trophy every single year. The Roosevelts would also, at these picnics that would go on for hours and hours, they would do swimming, as I said, they would do horseback riding, sometimes they would just sit under the trees and chat. It really was a time when they could slow down, talk about things that were not necessarily business, although there was some business discussed at these things, but certainly able to discuss it in a more informal atmosphere and having some fun and frolic along the way. By the way, where are you, Moriarty? Moriarty was Sherlock Holmes's enemy, and so the game has a tie-in to that as well. So go over and check out the YouTube page and see those home movies. They're really, really very interesting. Now, ordinarily, if you were to take somebody's picnic basket and to look through it, it would in fact be a violation of their Fourth Amendment rights to be secure in persons, papers, articles, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure without due process of law. And this was established for picnic baskets in the landmark case 1956. of Picnickers versus Bear, in which a Mr. Yogi Bear was found guilty of violating the sanctity of picnic baskets at a picnic area. He claimed it wasn't his fault; it was just boo-boo. But I'm sorry about that one. With the pandemic, all the good jokes are in quarantine. So you ordinarily wouldn't just go looking through somebody's picnic basket, but because we're doing it for educational purposes today, then I think we're okay with that as well. Now, you ate well at these picnics. In addition to the sandwiches and the corn on the cob, there would be raspberries from the Morgenthau farm. There would be potato chips, a perennial favorite. There would be macaroni salad, garden salads, veggie salads, potato salads, ice cream, cupcakes, and if very often Mrs. Roosevelt would host picnics up at Valkill. And here is a picture of her at the Punch Bowl at Valkill at a picnic. There's a pot here in front, but if you look closely behind there, there's a punch bowl, and she's getting ready to serve herself some punch. Now, somebody once said, "Oh, do you think that punch was spiked?" And I don't think that it was. Mrs. Roosevelt, because of the alcoholism that ran in her side of the family, would not do something like that, generally speaking. Although at these picnics, they did have beer and soft drinks, lemonade and such, as we talked about a minute ago. Here she is tending the fire at Valkill. So she was a very active member, not only of the picnic participation, but also the picnic preparation and making sure that folks were getting a good meal and having a good time. And in fact, one of the things that she did was she ran picnics for a group of underprivileged young boys. And here's a picture of her, the Wiltwick boys. She would have these picnics, and they would come up, and she would serve them all kinds of nice, yummy food and such. And when they played the games, the prizes for the games were bundles of lollipops. And so here she is with a group of these young boys, and she's serving them, again, one of the Roosevelt favorites, hot dogs. And if you look at the barbecue pit here, let's see, and you look up here very closely over here in the corner, there is a statue of a boy eating a hot dog. So that speaks to the love of hot dogs in the Roosevelt clan. When you actually have a sculpture of a boy eating a hot dog on your barbecue pit, that's a pretty good endorsement that hot dogs are held in high esteem. I also want to point out that these picnics would also sometimes be impromptu. So if they weren't being held at Campobello or Valkill, the president would just go out and drive around, find a nice spot, and he had some favorites here in the Hudson Valley. The picnics were generally not documented, so well, so that, and these weren't formal events. So it wasn't like there's memos back and forth, documenting where the various picnic places and such were. But here's the president up in the northern part of the county, and I love this picture for three reasons. Here he is on a picnic, probably out by Rudd Pond, somewhere up in the Stissing Mountain area. And what I like about this is a couple of interesting things. Number one is, notice that what they've done is they've taken the seat out of the car, and the president is seated on the seat that has been removed from the car. So again, very impromptu. Now, of course, because he had polio, it was difficult for him to, to move around and such. So this was a nice, comfortable seat for him. So just take the back seat out, plop it on the ground, and you got a nice, comfortable couch for the president. The other thing I think is so cute is that this is a picture of Fowler, and Fowler is on the picnic with the president, and he is just 4 months old in this picture. So this is actually a Fowler baby picture. And, he looks so cute, and he's really having a good time sitting there with the president. And then off to the side is this doll. And this doll is a shaker doll that was given to the president by a young woman in Rhinebeck, New York. And so, the doll is there on the picnic as well. So, just get the car seat out, plop it down, get the sandwiches out, get your dog on your lap, get your doll with you, and you got yourself a picnic and a party. And again, Roosevelts loved to do that. Now, I find it kind of ironic that President Roosevelt, of course, passed away on April 12, 1945 in Warm Springs, Georgia. And he was sitting for a portrait that was being done when he had the stroke and became unconscious. That was around 1 or 1:30 in the afternoon. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, he was scheduled to go where? On a picnic down there in Warm Springs, Georgia. He never made that picnic, but I think it's very fitting and very ironic that, on the day that he died, he had also, planned on having a picnic and, was getting ready for that as well. So that's the Roosevelts and picnics. Here we are in the later part of summer. The weather is a little hot out there still now, but it's starting to get a little bit cooler in the afternoons and the evenings. So maybe you should get together with 5 or 6 of your close friends. Keep your 6 feet apart, of course. Toss together some stuff in a picnic basket and partake in the famous Roosevelt pastime of picnicking. It's a great way to get some exercise. It's a great way to get outdoors. It's a great way to get away from a screen and just chat with friends and relatives and enjoy some of the great outdoors. Something very, very important as we're being kept in as much as possible with this pandemic. So now let's open it up to see if we've got any questions or comments from anyone. He's back again. Oh, yeah, will you get out of here? So let's see if we've got any comments here in the comment section. I don't see any coming up yet.
Was Eleanor a good swimmer?
Was Eleanor a good swimmer? That's a good question. Eleanor was pretty athletic for for a woman of her age, and she enjoyed horseback riding, and was pretty. She took pretty good care of herself in that sense. And of course, she loved being in the water. They loved the pool, great way to cool down. And that was an opportunity for her to get some relaxation and some exercise in as well. So yeah, she was a fine swimmer. And of course, the president was a fine swimmer too. I have a picture here of the president sitting on the edge of a pool, and I want to show you. This is something quite interesting. Look at the president's legs. Now, of course, he had polio, and you can see just how kind of withered his legs are. Compare these legs to the upper body strength of his arms, and you get a sense of how impacted he was by the polio. And yet, he still got in the water, even though he wasn't able to really move his legs. The water was sort of buoyant, so he was able to kind of stay up, but he used that upper body strength to maintain his balance and to stay above the water. So he got in the pool every chance he could get as well. Anything else? Any other questions?
Did the Roosevelt children enjoy picnics?
Did the Roosevelt children enjoy picnics? Yes, as I say, it's a Roosevelt family tradition. In fact, the Roosevelt children were at the King and Queen picnic, and reports are that when the Queen was offered a hot dog, she had never seen a hot dog before, right? Apparently there are no food carts out in front of Buckingham Palace, and so she had never really seen a hot dog before, and the legend is that she said, "How does one go about eating such a sausage?" And Franklin Jr. in fact said, "Well, Your Highness, just pick it up, put it in your mouth, and keep shoving it. It's going to be so good, you're going to love it." And reports are that the king enjoyed the hot dog so much that he actually asked for a second one. So the Roosevelt children were well enamored in the picnic tradition. And when they would go to Campobello, the children always went with them, and they would camp not camp, but they would picnic. Sometimes they would camp, but they would also picnic on the shores up there and use it as a swimming party and a swimming day. Sailing, swimming, playing games. Children love that as well.
Did they enjoy Shangri-La?
Did they enjoy Shangri-La? Now, most people may not know what Shangri-La is. Shangri-La is the modern-day Camp David. It was named after Eisenhower's grandson, David Eisenhower. But back in the day, it was Shangri-La. And Shangri-La was really pretty rustic back in its day. You know, kind of hard to get to. It was there. It was a presidential retreat, but you know, they would enjoy going there. But there were so many other places that they could go. And again, it didn't take much. All it took was, you know, a picnic basket, a blanket, a car seat, and you had yourself, you know, a good time. So they would visit Shangri-La, but it was more rustic than it is today, and less of a retreat, I think, in Roosevelt's time. He really liked spending his time in Warm Springs, Georgia, or here in Hyde Park.
Did the Royals record their thoughts of the picnic, and were they impressed with the valley?
The Royals, the question is, did the Royals enjoy the Hudson Valley? Did they, you know, write down their impressions of the picnic? And yes, in fact, the Queen later wrote a letter to the president saying how much she enjoyed the picnic and talking about how much fun it was to sort of let their hair down and just enjoy picnicking the way average people were. She was quite impressed by the hospitality, and they really enjoyed the fact that it was less formal than the formal dinners and things that had been held you know, in the days leading up to that as well. And of course, they loved you know, the Hudson Valley. I mean, how could you not love the Hudson Valley? And that was an important part of why the president wanted to bring them here, you know, to Hyde Park, so that they would get a sense of the beauty of the valley, get a sense of the beauty of the countryside, very much like the English countryside. And you know, I can't help but wonder if the king, you know, went to bed that night saying something to himself, maybe like, oh, if only we'd given them some representation in the parliament, you know, maybe we'd still have this. But that's just pure speculation on my part. But they were very well enamored by the visit. Okay, so you know, it's a beautiful day out there, and we're enjoying a wonderful part of the summer. Next month, things will cool down a little bit. So again, I would suggest or challenge you to throw together a picnic. You know, get together and treat yourself to an afternoon of being a Roosevelt. Throw some sandwiches in a basket, bring your ant repellent, and find a nice place to sit under the tree, talk about things with your friends and families, and just enjoy some slow time and let your mind just relax and enjoy the great outdoors.